Thanks everybody for joining us today. You're here for tips and strategies to build a predictable revenue pipeline. You have with you today, I'm Jason Hubbard. I'm Vice President of Partnerships and Alliances at Sales Intel. And we have Nicole Kelly here with us. Nicole, welcome, or welcome
Thank
back,
you.
I guess I should say.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here again.
All right. So agenda today, we're going to talk through the state of pipeline. We're going to teach you guys a little bit about the science and the art of sales-driven B2B marketing. I was telling Nicole earlier, this is the third webinar, roundtable, whatever, that I've done in the last week on aligning sales and marketing and trying to have a predictable revenue approach. So definitely a popular topic right now. And then we'll talk through the one thing that you need to build a predictable revenue pipeline. All right, so we'll start with the state of the pipeline. We'll keep this pretty conversational. So Nicole and I have done this quite a few times. But what are you seeing right now, Nicole, as far as what's going on? Obviously, we've been through a lot of change this year. So what's sort of the status that you guys are seeing out there?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that budgets are frozen, right? So like budgets are not increasing this year. Headcount is not necessarily increasing this year. So pretty much across the board, I'm seeing that new expenditures especially are cut for the foreseeable future and even into 2021. You know, we're coming into the fourth quarter, we're doing quarter planning. I haven't heard from anyone in the sales and marketing community that they're looking at bigger budgets. Everyone is trying to do more for less. And then what's also happening in the pipeline from the sales perspective is that existing customers are even coming back and starting to ask for concessions on previous contracts. They're wanting to renegotiate contracts. They're wanting discounts. They're trying to also stay afloat. So we're seeing that the pipeline, you know, the budget to get more pipeline is staying flat, but also that even our existing revenue might be taking a little bit of a dip because our customers are asking for concessions across the board.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing the same thing, you know, customers that normally would not even be, you know, taking a second look at renewal, anything like that, or almost universally, at least going out there and seeing what's out there, you know, bargain shopping, you know, and then, like you said, coming back and seeing what kind of concessions they can get. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty well across the board, certainly what we're seeing. All right, so does that mean that we all have to start lowering our forecast?
I don't think so. I mean, everything that I'm seeing is that if we can just get more smart about the things that we're doing and making sure that we're focused on the things that will deliver results, that we can run experiments, we can find the experiments that are validating something to be true, and then we can bet on those experiments, the more likely we are to be able to hit our numbers. And so I'm going to show you some of the things that I've been working on that are a little in traditional sales and marketing. They're a little bit outside the box. They might not be something you'd be thinking about right now, but they're proving out to be very strong strategies that are delivering on both sides of the house.
Yeah, I like how you said that. I mean, one of the things I've spoken about often since everything sort of, you know, went topsy-turvy back in March is, you know, at the end of the day, not a lot of it has changed as far as what you need to be doing. It's just that it's less forgiving if you're not following the best practices and doing the stuff that you should have been doing before all of this happened. And so, yeah, I mean, most of us know what we should be doing. It's just that we can't get away with taking the easy path or not following those best practices and stuff like we were able to, you know, 6-12 months ago.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I just heard this in the Inbound conference today from a session from Ty Heath, and I just love her at LinkedIn. And one of the things that she was talking about is that we have to be willing to take big bets. You know, so as I'm talking about this like experimental approach, like, yes, we want to experiment, we want to learn how to scale, but the key is that we have to be willing to make a bet. And if we're not willing to make a bet, then we're going to probably find ourselves just kind of barely treading above water. That's what I'm really seeing is if we're just kind of going with the status quo, doing the same thing that everybody else is doing in the marketplace, we're treading water. But if you're willing to take a big bet on something that you really just in your heart of hearts know is going to work because it checks all the boxes, that it just makes logical sense that it's going to work, it follows all the best practices, then you're more likely to actually start to find yourself into a position of market dominance. And so the strategy that I'm going to show you today is actually what our company has been doing to move itself into a position of pure market dominance. One thing that happens in this kind of market is that the other thing is that companies will be going out of business. There's just no way around it. We're in a recession right now. We're definitely headed into a depression. I mean, if you know anything about macroeconomics, we're headed into a depression. And so if that's happening, then there will be winners and losers. And so if you want to be on the winning side, you have to be willing to take that bet that's going to put you above your competition so that you actually stand out in the audience. So as Jason alluded to, the first thing that we have to do is focus on industries that are thriving in today's market, banks, healthcare, IT, collaboration companies, fitness companies. If you really look across the board in every single market, there are companies and industries that are really thriving. And so look at how you can kind of pivot into those companies. I personally was really impressed by what Foodsby did and looking at how to pivot offerings. So if you aren't familiar with Foodsby, they basically deliver meals to your corporate office. So you order from a restaurant and they're kind of like an Uber Eats, and they go pick it up and they bring it to your office. Well, when everything started, all the offices started shutting down, they actually shifted their business model to serve apartment complexes and condo buildings. And that was same service, same product, right? But they're shifting into an industry that now actually needs their service and product. So these shifts and these pivots don't have to be massive shifts. You can take what you're doing right now, but look at how you can serve these other markets. And then the other one is just to find the buyer with the most pain right now. Like, who has the most pain and the ability to decide right now? Because I might have pain, but if I don't have budget or resources to actually solve the pain, I'm not going to buy from you. And so this is really looking at your short-term pipeline, and then looking at how that can lead into long-term pipeline. So one of the things that we've done that's been really successful is we've developed these lead magnets. And, we had to go out into the market and to test some things where we actually did some work free to actually get our foot in the door because nobody was buying. But then once our foot was in the door, that is now leading to opportunities for paid business to actually fix the things that we identified needed to be fixed. So focus, pivot, find the buyer, and look at a creative solution to get your foot in the door. Kind of my key tips on who to ask for the sale right now.
Yeah, this aligns perfectly with what we did back in March when all this stuff started first occurring. I mean, the very first thing we did was went through and started building a list of quote unquote COVID-proof accounts or industries for us to target. And then, one of the great things about being a data provider is you can eat your own dog food and go apply that list and come up with your target accounts as well as your decision makers. And that's what we prioritized and really focused our campaigns around. And we also took a look at our offering and looked at how that had shifted a little bit for us. And one thing in particular, one of the advantages we have with our data set and the fact we own it from start to finish is it gives us access to things like work mobile numbers. And work mobile numbers for us used to be like it's kind of nice to have sort of thing, to now we straight up close deals solely because of the work mobile numbers, because of course nobody's in the office anymore. So those direct dial desk phones that everybody used to really prioritize have really, the value there has really fallen off. And so, you've got to pay attention. You've got to adjust strategy. You've got to look at not only your targets, but also what your offering is to them. And our ability to be able to do that's really, really paid dividends through this.
Yeah, those loss leaders, So, okay, so now we're kind of like jumping into the meat of I know what everyone is really here to learn, which is what is the one thing that we need to know to build a predictable pipeline. And I can tell you that being in marketing for over 20 years now, working directly with sales alignment, working on what Jason and I like to term smarketing, it really does come down to one thing. And so Jason, if you can go ahead and it's math. It's really just math. We need to understand what the math of our marketing mix is. So as we know, if you look at a traditional funnel, at the top of the funnel, you put people in the top of the funnel and you push people down through the funnel, and you're going to have people convert at the end. On our end, what we found is that this slide looks a little bit
yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
I don't know either, but I'll help you out. I'll help you through it. So what we found is that basically, so I work for an IT operations consulting firm, and I also work for a SaaS company. That's a software company in the IT space. And what we found is that when COVID hit in March, we actually in January had started doing contingency plans, because we kind of I had this intuition that something was coming and I didn't know what it was. And I walked into our executive team and I said, we need to make our business anti-fragile. And if you've not read the book, I think it's called Anti-Fragile. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend it. I'm a podcast listener, so I've listened to a bunch of podcasts on anti-fragility. And it basically says that there are things that you can do and ways that you can run your business that will make it anti-fragile, so that if the market goes down, your business actually goes up. So we started having those conversations in January. We identified industries that we would double down on in the beginning of the year. And then when March hit, we started to say, like, wait a second, like, this is a big pivot. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what's on the mind of IT leaders. So we have to we have to stop what we're doing, and we need to ask them. So we launched the first market research study that the company had ever launched. And this is what the math looked like. So at the very top, we reached out to 19,000 IT executives within Fortune 1000 companies. We used LinkedIn, and we asked them to participate in the survey. 297 of those took that action. The math on that is that's a 1.5% conversion rate. So 297 people took the action, but of those, only 148 actually opted into our database, which is a 0.77% conversion rate from that top of funnel number. As we look at that number, the interesting thing is that it's 148 of 297, which is technically 49% conversion rate, which is just like mad science there. Like that is unheard of in conversion rate numbers. So this is like our best case example of being able to take someone from the first action into our second action. Then from there, our survey asked the very end, it said, would you be interested in some of these types of offerings that we have that we're helping people through the recovery? 32 people had sales interest. That's a 0.17% conversion rate. So what we found is that using our best marketing campaign, we have a 0.17% conversion rate, our best case scenario. So this is like, I think, what builds the whole case for the model of sales intel, to be honest, because it really is the game of numbers. You need to know how many people you have to put in the top of the funnel to get to the bottom of the funnel. So I know now as a VP that my database size is the number one indicator of what's going to happen through my pipeline. I also know as a result of this that it takes about 5 months for someone to go from that top of funnel number into a viable sales opportunity. And so using that math now going into 2021, I can actually, do some math and be able to predict our pipeline. When I started with this company, there was zero tracking on, and there was zero data for me to be able to make these assumptions on. So what I'll say is that you must have enough people at the top of the funnel. You have to have meaningful conversion points. So in this case, like, we were using a survey that they get the results of, and we gave away an Oculus. We actually gave away 3 Oculus Quests, virtual reality headsets. And our whole message was, if the world gets too bad, at least you can, escape to the virtual world. And then you also just need to know that you're going to lose 50% or more of your audience at each conversion point. So you want few conversion points, but they need to be meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, there's several big lessons I learned early in my career here. One is marketing, and I mean, especially marketing, if you get down to trying to optimize all the way to revenue, it's a very big numbers game. It takes a lot at the top to push anything meaningful out the bottom. The others are your 3 primary levers that you can pull. The first 2 are the ones that everybody's aware of and thinks a lot about, which is improving, growing the total number you're feeding into the top, and then improving your conversion percentages. The one that a lot of people don't pay attention to is the number of touches, because if you have a certain conversion percentage per touch, Often the easiest way you can improve or increase the number or the output at the bottom is by increasing the number of touches. And I know I had another point, but I'm completely spacing on it. So,
Well, I will say this, this campaign, we had 3 touch points, you know, with that 19,000. So that I absolutely agree. If we just went with the first touch in the first message that we sent to them on LinkedIn, you know, it wouldn't have been as high, but we do find that because we go back and we like all of the prior posts. And when that happens, there's always a surge in responses. And we did that twice.
oh, I just remembered my last one. The other piece, and this is really important with what you point out, you're going to lose at least half your people at every one of those conversion points. If you can find a way to remove any of those conversion points, do it.
Yeah.
You know, at one of my previous companies, we had we were a B2B app, but we had a very much a B2C self-serve model. And that was a constant focus for us was how can we streamline the number of actions they have to take to actually be up and running?
Mm-hmm.
Because so much of that was self-serve, there wasn't much of an opportunity for us to go and try and course correct for them. So really had to optimize that journey.
Yeah, it's definitely a time for conversion rate optimization. You know, like if you don't have more money and you need your campaigns to do more with less, that's going to be the key. So this particular one is a different study, and this is the 2020 State of Cybersecurity Impact Study that we did. So different audience, different company. This is for a software company. Again, our audiences kind of overlap pretty significantly. So there's about 19,000 executives that fit into the cybersecurity space. And this one, 259 took the action. So we had a 1.3% conversion rate, still pretty kind of standard. I was very interested to see that this is the 3rd research study that I've done. The very first one I did, we had 298 respondents. The second one had 297. And I was like, man, if they all end up within 1 or 2 of each other, then there's something very interesting because those are totally different audiences. This one was 259. So 1.3% conversion rate. We asked 23 questions on this study versus the other one had 13. So that was also an interesting data point for us to look at. We thought that with having that many questions, we would have a deeper follow-up rate. This one actually had the higher completion rate of the survey than the other one. So it's not always that less questions equals more response. 105 of these opted in at a 0.55% conversion rate. Apparently double-digit opt-in numbers are required. The last one was 0.77, if you remember. So we got 0.55 on this one. And so this one was also 41%. So 41% of people who took the action also opted in. Again, if you're doing any kind of marketing, getting 41 to 49% opt-in rates is pretty unheard of. So these surveys really do work to drive that opt-in rate. But interestingly enough, this one we had 67 people had sales interest. If you remember, the other one was 32. So much higher percentage of sales interest, and we had a 0.35% conversion rate to sales interest. So in this company, our best case scenario from the top is 0.35% conversion to immediate sales interest. These were people who were specifically asking for a demo of the product. So again, each conversion point has to collect meaningful data. So I'm going to show you next, like the kind of data that we were able to collect as a result of this. And that data has to support the sales pipeline. If I ran a marketing campaign and I asked someone to fill out a form with 23 fields on it, I'd probably get a 0% conversion rate. But because this was positioned as a market research study, it is a legitimate market research study. We are sharing the results of the study. We were able to get our audience to tell us so much more about their business than any other marketing campaign could have. And then I also recommend that you test different marketing channels for effectiveness on delivering sales interest. So if I were to go look at our email channel, it would have totally different conversion rates. If I were to go to look at advertising channels, totally different conversion rates. But when you start to look at omni-channel and what you're doing across the board, when you have a fully rounded out marketing strategy and you're actually doing nurture campaigns in between, you can not only increase your conversion rates, you can decrease touch points, and you can find the message that's going to deliver the results. And like I said, the other key was that we combine this with lead magnets. And a lead magnet is basically an offer that many times is a loss leader. It's something that you're willing to not make a lot of money on just to get your foot in the door. And B2B marketing, this is key. We know that once our foot's in the door, if we're good at what we do, we're going to sell more. So we did some loss leaders at the beginning to get our foot in the door. And that's the people who said that they had sales interests.
Yeah, I think one thing that's worth pointing out here, we show how big of a numbers game it is and how much work it takes to get those 67 that had a sales interest, but also highlights how essential it is to have the right people you're feeding into the top. Because for all of that work, if half of those 67 were not actually qualified, then now you cut the number that you've got coming out the bottom even further. And so really it's not just feeding in as many to the top as possible, but it's making sure that those are as qualified as possible that you're feeding into the top of it.
Yeah, and also just like being creative about how to ask for the sales. So 67 people had sales interest, but we reached out to every single person who responded, and we asked them if they'd be interested in doing an interview with us and doing a video interview. And it's not something we're publishing, but it was more to just gain more insight into why people answered questions the way that they did. One of the questions said, has your company pivoted your products and services as a result of COVID? And like 67% of the Fortune 1000 said yes. That was like, what? Like the Fortune 1000 doesn't pivot. These are whales. These are like huge, cruise liners. But what we found is that it was actually that their IT team was pivoting the products and services they were offering to support the business. And we had to conduct interviews to do that.
Got it. Well, cool. So we talked the numbers and the math side of it. How about the art?
Yeah, so leading into the art, I think this is where we get really creative. So Jason, if you don't mind going to the next slide, this is really learning how to ask for the sale, right? So in that first study I showed you, we had 148 people who opted into the database. But from that data, I actually could break down who was spending on what. So I created lists for our sales team that said, these people are spending on security. These people are spending on service management, data analytics, process optimization. These are all key things that we help companies do. And from that, we basically use the data to understand what the audience wants. And then we empowered the sales team to then ask them. We asked them where they were investing, but then we empowered the sales team to reach out to them based on this information that they had. Now, one piece of this is that we had mass market data, right? Which says that, okay, we know the percentage of the audience that's spending on AI ops as an example. This is a major industry trend. Interestingly enough, the number was incredibly low compared to like what people have been saying in the past. And instead they were spending on near-term opportunities with data analytics and process optimization. So we have this story that we can tell around where the industry is headed. But Jason, if you go to the next slide, the interesting thing is that from that, we were able to gather individual information. So this is an example of what is in our database, and we use HubSpot. This is in HubSpot on an individual person who is a target account. So this is a C-level executive at a major Fortune 1000 company telling us how they make decisions. They're an innovator, that they're in the telecommunications industry. They're not pivoting to new products and services. For how they want their vendors to assist them in 2020 is to provide additional product strategy, technical resources, and help them accelerate user adoption. Like, I won't go through the whole list, you can read this, but it also tells us what's happening to their revenue. It tells us where they're prioritizing cutting spending. And from this, our salesperson can say, hey, I see that you're looking to invest in security, DevOps, and AI ops over in 2020. Our company does this. Here's a beautiful lead magnet to help get you in the door, and give them a specific offer. So without this information, marketing is basically just sending campaigns. We use a shotgun approach, saying, hey, here's a message, we're gonna send it to everyone. Or we use hyper-targeting, which is basically like, here's one to few. We know that maybe 20 people want this, so we're gonna go to 20 people who have this criteria. In this case, now I'm able to do not only one-to-one marketing, I can do one-to-one sales as well.
We're running a little bit short on time, so we'll get through these as quickly as we can.
Sure. So combining the art and science, basically you want to find a way to ask more with less marketing transactions. We talked about lowering conversion points. Get your opt-in and put your data in the CRM. This is really key for you to have that sales to marketing handoff. Turn your marketing engine into a thought leadership engine. I'm going to show you that really quickly, and make sure you're passing meaningful leads to sales. So make sure you're always checking the quality of those leads. If sales says they're not good, then you need to change your strategy at the top of the funnel.
Yeah, that was a big piece that we talked about in the roundtable yesterday for AAISP. Was make sure you've got those feedback channels going back and forth between sales and marketing. It's a never-ending optimization process.
Absolutely. So one of the things in this is that, you saw that we had throughput for sales, but we're also leveraging these studies for market dominance, like I talked about. We did webinars with dripped result reveals, meaning we only showed a few results at a time. We have a final report that we're releasing to our entire database. We have about 55,000 people in our database. We have a derivative report that we're also releasing to the entire database. We have blog post content galore. It'll fill our entire content strategy for 2021. We'll also redo the study again next year. We're building infographics, and then we're also doing a mass market media blitz that shows that we dominate the industry conversation. Now, the interesting thing about our IT operations company, it's called Windward Consulting Group. And Windward is what you would consider a mid-sized consulting group. We've got, like 120, 110 employees at the company right now. But we often compete with Accenture, Deloitte, PwC, the big people in the market. Right now, we are on track to pass them in media coverage this year in the fourth quarter with the results of this study. So it's a true testament that you can take a very small marketing budget, a very small initiative, and you can turn it into something that will last not only for this year, but this will feed our marketing funnel for the next 12 to 24 months.
All right.
I think this is just more of a statement, with marketing research was the key. We use market research, not traditional campaigns. And with that, we were able to really drive a predictable marketing qualified lead funnel into sales with that deep sales intelligence. That was the key of the differentiator. It was not only driving the MQL, it was driving the sales intelligence, and we tee up the sale at a predictable cost. I can tell you exactly how much these leads cost. I can tell you the conversion rates. And I know if we do it again, we'll have the similar results because we already have done it again and seen similar results. And actually, we're getting better at it.
Yeah, I mean, the getting better at a piece, obviously, if you're not measuring it, you can't optimize it. You can't figure out where you've got room for improvement or where you're actually improving things.
Absolutely.
All right. So we've got just a couple of minutes, looks like 1 minute, but I can hang on for a couple of minutes more if people need it. But I open it up for Q&A here. If not, we can go ahead and wrap things up.
Definitely happy to answer questions if interested.
I guess we were extra clear on everything.
I know. Well, they say that's good communication, I'm pretty sure, right?
We'll go ahead and pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah, sounds
all right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Like I said, we will send an email out tomorrow. It'll have a link to the recap with both the deck and the recording. If you do think of any questions after the fact, feel free to reply to that email. I can route it to either myself or Nicole. Anything that you guys would like us to follow up on. But apart from that, thanks everybody for joining us today. Nicole, this has been great as always.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for joining.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.